Okay, Wildcats. Today we're looking at Journal page 4, graphs of linear, absolute value, rational parent functions. Okay, let's start with the linear parent function. Okay, so when x is -2, y is -2. Okay, and the reason that is because the function is f of x equals x. Okay, so when f is -2, then the x value is -2. Okay, when f of -1 equals -1, when f of 0 equals 0, when f of 1, basically whatever you put in for x, that is what the f of x value is, okay? So f of 2 equals 2. All right, and refocus there a second. Now, next thing we want to look at is the first difference in y. Basically, what do you ask yourself, what do you add to -2 to give you -1? The answer to that's +1. What do you add to -1 to give you 0? The answer to that's +1. What do you add to 0 to give you 1? The answer to that's +1. What do you add to 1 to give you 2? The answer to that's +1. So basically, the first difference in the y values is the same. So we say it has a first difference in y. Okay. Now, as you see from these values, they're graphed here. -2, -2, -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. The function we already said is f of x equals x. The domain is from -infinity to positive infinity. That's because it's going infinitely in the negative direction and the positive direction from left to right. And it's also going in the infinite direction from bottom to top. So the domain and range is -infinity to positive infinity in both the domain and range. I've also written the inequality notation to the right. All right, so if you would go ahead and finish up the linear parent function. All right. Now let's take a look at the absolute value parent function, okay? When x is -2, the y value or f of x value is 2. And the reason being is because the function is f of x equals absolute value of x. So when f of -2, we plug in -2 for x, the absolute value of -2 is a positive 2, okay? When f of 1 or -1, you plug in -1 to the absolute value, which is positive 1. When f of 0, that's the absolute value of 0 equals 0. When f of 1, the absolute value of 1 equals 1. And the f of 2 equals the absolute value of 2, which is 2, which we have those points graphed here. So -2, 2, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, and actually you can keep going 3, 3, 4, 4, so on. Okay. Now, the domain is going infinitely in the negative direction and the positive direction from left to right. So the domain is -infinity to positive infinity. The range starts at 0, so it's bracket 0 included, and it's going to infinity. So bracket 0 to infinity. And then I've also included the inequality notation for the domain and range. All right, go ahead and finish absolute value parent function. All right. So now we have graphs of linear absolute value, rational parent functions, journal page 4 continued. Now, normally this is where advanced would be doing the second page, but in this case, I want both algebra and algebra 2 and advanced algebra 2 to do the second page, okay? All right, so rational parent function, okay? So when x is -2, the f of x value is -0.5 or -1/2. And the reason that is because the function is f of x equals 1 divided by x. So when you have f of -2, that's 1 divided by -2, which equals -0.5. Okay? So then when f is -1, the y value f of x is -1 because f of -1 equals 1 divided by -1, which is -1. Now when x is 0, it's undefined because you have f of 0 equals 1 divided by 0, which is undefined. And then when x is 1, the y value is 1 because f of 1 equals 1 divided by 1, which equals 1. And then when f of 2, the f of x value is 0.5 because f of 2 equals 1 divided by 2, which is 0.5. Okay. Now, Because it's undefined, you have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. Okay? That means all you have to graph is the -1 point, because once you do, you have the curve, because the curve lies between the asymptotes. And same thing when you graph 1, 1, you know the point's here, so the curve is here. Okay, now domain is from -infinity to 0, because it's undefined at 0, not included, or from 0, not including 0, to infinity. So that means it's not including 0 in the left and right domain. Same thing in range is from -infinity to 0, not including 0, or from 0 to infinity, not including 0. Okay, so if you would, go ahead and finish that up. And then what I recommend is to start your my.hrw.com 1.2 assignment. You don't have to finish every problem, but I recommend working on the ones that relate to linear, absolute value, and rational function. Okay, so try to do a couple problems that relate to that assignment. That way, if you do a couple of the assignments each day this week, you'll be done by the last part of 1.2, characteristics of functions. All right. So with that, also don't forget to work on the Khan Academy SAT preparation for 10 minutes, and have a wonderful Wildcat day.